You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now for a closer look at some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Senator Gene Davis and Kirk Jowers with us. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Glenn.
You bet. Big story of the week, obviously, the initiatives. Right. The Lieutenant Governor unveiling the final results and some pretty interesting ones at that. So let's go ahead and start off with the Count My Vote initiative. It appeared to be on the ballot, and it's not. Senator Davis, let's start with you. What happened? Why did it fail?
I think one of the reasons is the recession. Being able to take names off once you've gone out and got them. You've been able to reduce those. And the percentages that are needed in every Senate district also. It floats it in a way really to defeat the initiatives before they ever get to the ballot.
Kurt, let's bring you in. And in fair disclosure, you work with Count My Votes. Let's get that out there. Is this the end of the battle?
No, it's absolutely not, and Gene's exactly right. It really is built against getting something through. We had 132,000 signatures, and they were able to pigeonhole 3 Senate districts. They pulled off less than 200 in 2, 211 in 1, and that got us just below the number. So we still had well over 25,000 signatures more than the requirement. We had all the counties, and they were able to pull it off. That's not right, and there's some legal precedent for that not being right. But on more practical terms, some of our signatures were invalidated for improper reasons. We're close enough in those 3 that we feel like we'll end up on the ballot. And if we do, the polls have...
Through the court process.
Through the court process. The only thing left now, because Utah law, and Gene could probably talk about it, but the Utah law is the hardest in the district to get initiative on the ballot, and we hadn't had one since 2004. So it is fascinating that we had 4 qualify. One of the 4, Count My Vote, was knocked off. But we're going to have a little more interesting general election this year than we've had in the past.
Yeah, definitely. Some of them got on that people thought may not have. So we'll get to more of that in just a minute. But sticking with this idea, Senator Davis, do we need to really look at this process, reevaluate it, and possibly make some changes?
I would like to see it changed. I think going out and being able to pull rescinding signatures after a person has worked so hard to get those signatures on, I mean, that makes it very difficult. And that's to get the referendum on. But once you've gone through and you've done the Count Your Vote initiative, or not the initiative, I mean the actual document that you have to take to get your names on, then you get to take those names off also, challenge those names. I mean, it could never end.
So what would be potentially reasonable changes? If you're going to have this, do you need to eliminate the removal process, or do you keep it and then give the initiative a couple of weeks to rebut what was happening?
I think either of those would work. I mean, it's a hard job. It's why it hadn't happened for 14 years. We hadn't had one on. We had to get 132,000 signatures. They were able to get it off with essentially pulling off 600. And the way they did it, there are reports that they go after the more vulnerable people, elderly and others who are nervous to have people saying you shouldn't be for this. All that happens, of course, once it's on the ballot is that everyone gets to vote. So they'd have plenty of time to argue against it, but they know they'd lose because they've never had over 14%. They tried their own initiative, and according to the Lieutenant Governor, they got 39 signatures.
Yeah, 0 out of 29 counties.
0 out of 29. And so what did they do? It's easier to destroy than it is to build, and they decided to destroy.
Medical cannabis, a lot of allegations flying there with the tactics that were being used. It did end up getting certified by the Lieutenant Governor. What type of a chance do you see that having in November? You
know, the general public has been very, very supportive.
It's wildly
in the 60 to 70% percentile with those in various different polls that have been done. We passed that in the Senate. It was never voted on in the House, though it was debated and heard. And we've had it here for, about 3-4 years now, as I remember. And it's been circulating around, and we've been trying to do this and that, get studies done, things like that. Of course, the federal law stops us from doing that.
Right.
But when you have the number of states that we have in the nation that are now doing medical, and the people tend to want it, You know, I think it has a very good chance.
Polls do show that Utahns support medical marijuana, but a lot of big names are coming out saying, yeah, we support medical marijuana, but not this avenue to get it there. The governor, the church coming out. You know, the debates we saw on Tuesday night, candidates were saying, you know, I'm not going to vote for this initiative.
Right.
What type of impact might that have on this?
All of that will have an impact. Obviously, the LDS Church and the Utah Medical Association, those are two huge influential groups in Utah, and they will try to educate about why medical marijuana is okay, but this initiative is the wrong step. But right now the polls are very strongly in favor, so it'll come down to a communication battle and who's best able to explain why medical marijuana is good, but this initiative is bad.
Well, and I think the one thing that's happening in the debate already on this initiative is the fact that those that are against it are trying to use a fear tactic by saying this just opens the door to recreational use.
And slippery slope is never a great argument.
Right.
They're going to have to get much more specific about what happens on day one with this and if that makes people nervous or not.
Should mention litigation could play a role in that one as well, because the Utah Medical Association has filed a lawsuit on that.
I think one thing also, staying on that for just a moment, is the fact that as this debate goes on and we hear more, don't forget, the one thing is once it passes the initiative stage, we can tweak that.
Right.
The legislature can.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We can tighten it up. We can do a lot of different things to it. And I believe we would.
Right.
On that one. Let's move on to Medicaid expansion. You've run the bill, full Medicaid expansion, year after year.
Very, very supportive.
So you like this initiative?
I like the initiative.
Do you see it passing in November?
Once again, if you take a look at the polling that's been done, it is there, and the people want it. You know, when we have so many people that can't get access to health care, when we take a look at our homeless population, we take a look at those on the street, they need access to health care, and we need to be able to do that to reduce the cost of health care to a very, very vulnerable population.
The legislature did pass a plan, though, this year that will extend it, if approved by the federal government, up to 100% of the poverty level. So not full Medicaid expansion, but covers those in the coverage gap. Will Utahns take a look at this initiative and say, I like this route as opposed to full Medicaid expansion?
The one thing that I am really opposed to that initiative or that bill that the governor brought forward was the 100%, but also the capitation. It's only good for 70,000 people when there's 160,000 people that need care.
Okay, Kirk, let's bring you in. We have about 30 seconds left. We'll let you write it on out.
Well, as Gene said, I think the reason all four of these made it is there is popular support for them, but for whatever reason, and each one has their own unique reason, the legislature has never been able to get bills passed, and so that prompted it. But you're going to see strong opposition on all of them. I'm so glad it's going to the people, though, because all of these have just been there for years. And this is finally the moment where the state of Utah, the people of Utah, get to say once and for all how they want to move forward on hopefully four very important issues.
And the fair boundaries is very, very important.
Yeah, that's one we didn't get to, unfortunately, but we are out of time. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.